I sat at my apartment window, the city skyline stretching like a glittering necklace beneath me. My silk blouse brushed against my skin, smooth and cool, yet my stomach twisted in that familiar knot of unresolved memories. My phone buzzed on the marble countertop, and for a second, I hesitated to pick it up. Names flashed, family group chat, my mother, my brother, but I already knew what it would be. Cheerful messages, vague congratulations, a casual, hope you're doing well, all coded with that tone I'd grown to recognize, the one that made my accomplishments feel smaller than they were. I sipped my coffee, inhaling its bitter warmth, and tried to focus on the view. My life looked effortless from the outside, my boutique agency thriving, my calendar full, my apartment curated with every detail reflecting the woman I had worked so hard to become. Yet, even in this calm, memories pricked like thorns. A message popped up, unexpected. A photo from my 22nd birthday. Or rather, not mine. The image showed my parents grinning, candles glowing, a cake decorated for my brother's success party. "Stop being so jealous," the caption read, as if dismissing me had always been part of the plan. My hands tightened around the mug. Hurt, yes. Anger, maybe. But also pride. That single, careless photo reminded me how far I had come, and how quiet, unnoticed, my rise had been. I let the city hum below me, breathing in resolve. This time, no one would underestimate me. I remember that day like it was etched in acid. My 22nd birthday had started with a quiet hope. I thought my parents might finally see me, really see me for once. I had chosen my favorite dress, a soft lavender chiffon that brushed my knees, and my hair fell in gentle waves over my shoulders. I even baked a small cake myself, a chocolate one with creamy swirls and delicate piping. It was modest, yes, but it was mine, and I had wanted this day to feel personal, meaningful. Then I walked into the living room, and there it was. My cake had been shoved aside, replaced by a towering, extravagant dessert bedecked in gold accents and candles spelling out my brother's name. The room buzzed with laughter and congratulations for him, his promotion, his achievements, his success, everything overshadowing the one small day that was supposed to be mine. "Stop being so jealous," my mother said lightly, brushing past me with a smile. My father clapped my brother on the shoulder, beaming. Everyone else laughed as if I were invisible. And in that instant, something inside me cracked. My throat tightened. I felt the sting of tears that weren't allowed. My hands shook as I clutched my discarded cake, the chocolate frosting smudging on my fingers. I fled to my room, locking the door behind me, letting the tears fall in silence. No one knocked. No one cared. But then I remembered my grandmother's words from last week, when she'd called me after hearing my quiet frustration. Never let someone else's shine dim your own. Build your own light, no matter who's standing in the room. She had handed me a small, worn notebook, insisting I write down my dreams, my plans, my ideas, anything that made me feel alive. That notebook became my secret sanctuary, a place where I could nurture the version of me no one else seemed to notice. By the end of the night, I made a decision. I would no longer wait for recognition from people who couldn't see me. I would build my own path, quietly but relentlessly, and one day, they would know what they had missed. I pressed my hand against that notebook, tracing the edges, feeling a warmth of resolve spreading through me. That night, between the shadows of disappointment and the small, private thrill of possibility, the first spark of independence ignited. After that night, I threw myself into the world I was determined to create. The notebook from my grandmother became a blueprint for my independence. I listed goals, sketched business ideas, and mapped every step I would take to turn dreams into reality. I still lived at home for a while, quietly working in my room while my family celebrated milestones that weren't mine. Each night, I stayed up past midnight, learning digital marketing, reading books on entrepreneurship, watching tutorials on business strategy. My hands often cramped from writing and typing, but the ache was worth it. It was proof that I was building something tangible, something solely mine. My first break came through an unexpected mentor, Clara Bennett, a formidable woman who ran a boutique marketing agency downtown. I met her at a networking event, introduced by a mutual friend. Clara's sharp eyes assessed me in seconds, reading past my hesitance to the determination that burned quietly underneath. "You've got potential," she said bluntly, "but you'll need grit to get anywhere. Are you willing to bleed for it?" Her question startled me, but it also lit a fire. I nodded, and from that moment, she took me under her wing, guiding me through the maze of client acquisition, brand building, and navigating an industry still dominated by men. The early days were brutal. There were nights I cried in the bathroom, questioning every decision. There were mornings I considered giving up entirely, convinced I wasn't enough. But each small victory pushed me forward. My first paying client was a tiny local boutique, and landing them felt monumental. Then came my first profitable campaign, followed by my first fully independent project, which exceeded expectations and earned praise from people I respected. Slowly, I built a reputation for creativity, reliability, and intelligence. Throughout it all, I kept my success hidden from my family. I posted casual, modest updates on social media, avoiding specifics. My mother would occasionally comment, "Looks like someone's busy," with a tone meant to undermine, and I would smile politely, letting the truth remain my secret weapon. The satisfaction was subtle but deeply gratifying, knowing that I was flourishing on my own terms, while the memory of that ignored birthday lingered as fuel rather than pain. By my 26th birthday, I had moved into a loft apartment downtown, sleek and full of light, decorated with artwork I loved and furniture I had picked myself. My boutique agency had a small but growing client base, and my reputation was beginning to ripple through the industry. Yet I never flaunted it. My rise was private, personal, and deliberate, a contrast to my brother's loud, celebrated achievements. Each day, I reminded myself of the vow I had made in that bedroom at 22, to carve a life that belonged to me, not to anyone else's expectations or approval. I often glanced at that worn notebook, now filled with ideas, goals checked off, and reflections scribbled in the margins. It reminded me of the fire I had lit for myself, the independence I had fought to secure. Every success was a quiet, private victory, a testament to resilience, determination, and the refusal to let my past define me. The invitation arrived unexpectedly. My parents had dropped by my new apartment. I hadn't called them. I hadn't even mentioned my move. Part of me debated answering the door, but curiosity won. When I opened it, they stood there, wide-eyed, my brother grinning awkwardly beside them. I could see the unspoken expectation. They thought they were walking into the same shy, struggling version of me they had left behind. I gestured for them to enter. "Welcome," I said, keeping my voice calm, measured, but layered with a subtle edge. My parents stepped inside, their eyes sweeping over the space as if trying to decode how someone like me could live like this. My apartment was an expression of my journey. A sleek, light-filled loft with large windows overlooking the city, walls adorned with modern art I had chosen myself, a polished oak desk stacked with organized papers, awards, and photographs of events I'd attended professionally. On a low shelf sat my grandmother's worn notebook, a quiet reminder of how it all began. The air smelled faintly of coffee and lavender, a scent I always used when I wanted clarity and calm. They stopped at the living room, and for a long moment, no one spoke. My brother's smile faltered. My mother's hand twitched toward her mouth. My father's brows were drawn in confusion. I let them absorb it all, watching the disbelief play across their faces. Finally, I broke the silence. "I know you didn't expect to see me like this," I said, moving to the desk and gesturing toward the awards. "I didn't need your approval to succeed. I built my agency, my clients, my reputation from scratch. I've been running campaigns for companies you've never heard of, generating revenue you wouldn't have believed I could. My net worth now, well, let's just say, I no longer rely on anyone's recognition." My brother's jaw tightened, and my mother's lips parted, searching for words. My father remained silent, shock rooted deep in his expression. I walked them through my journey, recounting the nights I spent learning, the early failures, the mentor who had believed in me, the countless steps I had taken to craft a life entirely my own. Each revelation landed like a wave. They had always assumed I'd remain small, overlooked, or jealous of my brother's life. But here I stood, unshaken, composed, and luminous with the power of my accomplishments. My grandmother's notebook, carefully placed on the desk, seemed to draw their eyes. "This," I said softly, "was my first gift of independence. Every line, every idea in here is proof that I chose myself, even when you didn't." My parents' expressions shifted from disbelief to shame. My brother avoided eye contact, and my mother's hands fidgeted nervously. The atmosphere was thick with tension, yet I felt an unexpected surge of calm. I had waited for this moment for years. Not for revenge, not for validation, but to finally reveal the truth. I was no longer the girl whose birthday had been overshadowed by someone else's success. I ended the tour with a quiet but undeniable statement. "You may have celebrated him that day, but I celebrated myself. And I've been celebrating every day since." For a long time, no one spoke, and in that silence, I felt the power shift subtly but irreversibly. I was no longer a shadow in my own life. After the silence stretched long enough for them to feel the weight of truth, I finally spoke again, my voice calm but unwavering. "I'm willing to help, but not on your terms. Not anymore." My parents blinked, uncertain, as though they had never imagined a version of me capable of setting rules. My brother shifted uncomfortably, finally catching the subtle steel in my tone. "I'll support you," I continued, "but only if you commit to real change. Mom, that means listening, not dismissing, and seeing me as an equal, not as someone who should be less jealous. Dad, that means respecting boundaries, not assuming I'm dependent. And you," I said, turning to my brother, "you need to stop measuring everyone else by your achievements. Success isn't a competition. Support can coexist with ambition." I paused, letting my words settle. The room was still, the air thick with both tension and recognition. "If you want to be part of my life moving forward, these aren't optional," I said firmly. "They are conditions for trust, growth, and repairing what's been broken. I won't bend to old patterns that diminish me." Their faces showed shock, but beneath it, I could detect the first flickers of understanding. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was asserting the standards that would protect my life, my energy, my hard-won independence. "You'll also need to pursue your own goals seriously," I added. "Stop relying on me or anyone else to fill gaps in your ambitions or ego. I'm here to love and support you, not to enable laziness or entitlement." I gestured toward my apartment, the trophies, the framed letters of gratitude from clients and colleagues. "Everything here," I said softly, "was earned with persistence, patience, and belief in myself. That same discipline is what I expect from each of you if you want a place in my life." My mother swallowed, her eyes glistening. My father's posture softened slightly, the tight lines around his mouth loosening. My brother exhaled, a mix of shame and understanding crossing his features. "It's a lot," my mother whispered. "But I think we understand. We've been blind." "Yes," I said, nodding. "Blind, but not anymore. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm offering a path to connection that doesn't cost me my dignity or my independence. You will respect my terms, or you will watch me live fully without you." In that moment, the power shifted completely. I wasn't just the overlooked daughter anymore. I was a woman who had endured neglect, jealousy, and dismissal, and had transformed it all into strength, clarity, and authority over her life. The conditions I set weren't merely rules. They were a blueprint for everyone around me to grow, to respect, and to engage honestly. For the first time in years, I felt that quiet, unshakable satisfaction, a balance of compassion and strength. I wasn't acting out of anger, but from a deep, unwavering sense of self-respect. The people who had underestimated me were now facing the truth. The girl whose birthday had been stolen had become a woman who could never be overshadowed again. In the weeks that followed, subtle changes began to emerge. My mother stopped making dismissive remarks and genuinely asked about my projects, showing curiosity instead of comparison. My father started checking in without judgment, offering encouragement rather than unsolicited advice. Even my brother, though hesitant at first, began pursuing his own goals with more intention, occasionally asking for guidance instead of expecting competition. The shift wasn't instant, but it was real, and it felt like a quiet victory, one that couldn't be measured by applause or cake. I often returned to the worn notebook my grandmother had given me, flipping through the pages filled with sketches, goals, and reflections from the earliest days of my journey. It had been a symbol of independence, a talisman I carried through doubt and disappointment. Now, it also served as a reminder of how far I had come, the bridge between the vulnerable young woman who had been overshadowed and the confident, accomplished version of myself. One evening, I sat in my apartment, watching the sunset paint the skyline in shades of gold and pink. I reflected on the journey, the hurt of being ignored, the sting of jealousy disguised as admonishment, the countless hours I spent building something from nothing. Each memory carried a weight, but it no longer weighed me down. Instead, it strengthened me, a testament to resilience, patience, and unwavering belief in my own worth. I smiled softly as I traced the edges of my grandmother's notebook, now tucked on the shelf beside awards and photos of milestones I had reached. The lessons were clear. Growth requires patience, self-respect is non-negotiable, and success is sweetest when it is earned quietly, without the need for validation from those who cannot see your worth. And in that quiet moment of reflection, I understood something profound. The celebration that had been taken from me wasn't lost. It had simply been delayed, amplified by the life I had created for myself. I had given myself the recognition I deserved, and that power was eternal. With the city lights twinkling below, I whispered to no one in particular, but as if the universe itself could hear. I am enough. I am seen. I am unstoppable. And in that one-line affirmation, I found the ultimate closure, a blend of strength, independence, and grace. I wasn't defined by a cake, a party, or a sibling success. I was defined by my courage, my choices, and the woman I had become.